Happy Monday, everybody. Hello, hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
I almost missed your request.
It doesn't like to accept it the first time I send it.
That's so weird. Gotta love Instagram. So how are you?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah.
Busy.
Weekend flew by again?
Yeah. It always
Yeah.
does. And then today we have nice weather, so I was out I literally almost missed it today. I did because I was outside with the chickens cleaning out the chicken coop, and I realized we had 5 minutes till it was time, and I'm like checking to make sure I don't have any like hay in my hair before I get down here.
I would have let you know if there's hay sticking out. But yeah, that's usually me. I usually get like distracted and I'm like, oh crap, I gotta be there.
Yeah.
All right. So today, we kind of really didn't set a topic other than, I guess, talking about sourcing. So, we've told people, you can balance over time and what foods and what portions they should be feeding. But a lot of people don't know where they can get these items from. So, um, you want to go ahead and start? Like, where do you specifically get your foods from? I know you raise a lot of it.
Yeah, we raise a lot. So there's that. The rest of it I source a lot locally because I put in a lot of effort in the beginning to find a lot of local sources. So I get a lot from small farms, from meat processors, from hunters, from farmers markets. We don't really have a good selection of like ethnic markets around here, so I don't utilize that much. But definitely, there's raw food co-op near me that I use
Nice.
once in a while. And there's a lot of those anymore. I didn't even know about it for years, and it literally drops like 5 miles from my house. I didn't know about it.
That's awesome.
So if you search for those, I was looking into it for people in the past, and there's raw food co-ops pretty much in every state anymore that you can find. So there might be something near you if you want to use something like that. That can be the way to save money too. And then obviously online, I don't buy a lot online, but that's obviously the easiest, the most convenient, where you can get pretty much anything. I just don't personally use it because I can find all the stuff that I need locally.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how I am. I remember when I first started raw feeding, I think I got most of it just from the grocery store. And we, thankfully we do have a few ethnic markets. There's a lot of like Korean markets over here. And so that's where I was getting, like the tongues and the organs and wings and all the op ends, because they eat that stuff on a regular basis. And a lot of Hispanic markets, eat the stuff that not normal people, but you know what I mean? Like the average diet, they don't typically go eat tripe, you know what I mean? But in some cultures that it's regular. So that's where I found a lot of mine. But when I was trying to source for like my own treats, like the freeze dried treats, I wanted to source as local as possible. Not only because I wanted to, help my community and my local farmers, but because I also wanted to keep costs down. I didn't want to have to order online from, the East Coast and pay for the shipping and put that cost on my customer. So I literally took just like a full day and I drove around town just trying to find, grocery stores that I hadn't known about before, and also just farms. And when I talked to the farmers, they would tell me about their friend and their local farm, because not all of them are online, So So that's, where I get a lot of it now. So
One of the
it's
things I did with local farms is I joined like some local hunting and farming groups on Facebook and
mhm.
asked around. And then I made a lot of good connections. Like you say, from one person will lead you to another good source. And I have so many good contacts that I've come across doing that over the years that I started utilizing when I first started feeding, and I still use them today.
Yeah, I do too. So I think the Facebook groups, like your local group, I think is a great resource. I mean, just ask, especially if you're looking for like goat's milk and stuff like that. Because it gets a little pricey when you're finding that in the pet store.
Yeah.
And you can literally find it down the road or in your community, and you can get a gallon of it for $5, So you don't have to go spending $10 for a pint or however much it is. Those local groups are really good to ask around for co-ops too, because even though you can find them, you can Google it now and more do pop up. I could be mistaken, but I think Keep the Tail Wagging. I think her blog,
Yeah,
she have like a
yeah, she's got a
compilation?
co-op. She's got a pretty extensive list. There's a few that I've come across that weren't on the list too, though. So, but she does
Yeah.
have a good list. Yeah, I've referenced people that go to her list before because she's got a decent list with co-ops in various states.
Mm-hmm. And I know there's the Ross Wells Co-op. You can go on your local Facebook group, and typically you will have a co-op near your area. And what is it called? Not the Ross Wells has the Titan blend, but there's a Texas Tripe. That's another one. Texas Tripe is another one that delivers, like they have a route going across the nation. And so you can get onto their website and see when they do drop-offs in your area. So I also do a lot of like Facebook groups where I'll ask hunters. So before hunting season, everybody's trying to clear out freezer space for their new meat coming in. And so let's talk about freezer burnt meat. So for us humans, freezer burnt meat does not taste very good. It has a weird texture. We don't like the flavor, but it's completely safe to eat. As long as the meat has been frozen and stayed frozen, you can definitely feed it to your pets too. So that's what I do a lot of the time. Even though we hunt, we're not filling our freezer every year, but I have hunter friends, and I'll go onto local groups and be like, hey, does anybody want to clean out the freezer space? Like, I'll take whatever. And I'll even offer them money too, but typically they just want to get rid of it.
Yeah. I had one of the best scores ever from a hunter. We have like a massive Canadian goose problem in the area. So there's people that are like contracted to like reduce the populations of them. And when I first started feeding, I got in contact with one of those people, and they gave us like 70 pounds of wild goose breast meat.
Holy cow.
It was crazy,
Whoa.
but it was free. And it was like my cat developed a taste for wild goose naturally. So now I'm like trying to find people that hunt them to keep feeding it to them.
Yeah, we have neighbors that do a lot of like pheasant hunting, and so they take like a big group, and I don't know how many that they're allowed each, but it's something crazy, like 20 birds a piece per person, and so they can't eat all of it, and so they'll give us whatever they have left over in frames and carcasses.
And if you make
stuff.
Friends with people that hunt, I mean, a lot of them aren't eating. I mean, they're not eating the bones of the birds or anything like that. So you can utilize that. You can utilize, if they don't eat the organ, you can utilize the organ that they're not eating.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I get so much stuff from people that we know that hunt, or from farms even, that discard parts of the animal that they don't personally use.
Yeah. And so that's a good way to get in, wild game, because if you purchase wild game online, it's so expensive.
It's crazy expensive.
Yeah, it is. And so that's a really good way to be able to incorporate some of the wild game on a budget.
Yeah, once a year I throw up a like classified ad just asking for anybody who, and every year I get people that call and say, come and get it. Like one of the first times I ever did, I got a lady who they had shot 2 deer on their property at the beginning of hunting season. And she said, we feed our dogs raw, but I would share with you if you want to come help us process it, which I know a lot of people would be like, no way. But I was like, yes. So I went and I helped them process the deer, and I left with so much food. Much food.
That's awesome. And, I know that turns a lot of people off. Not everybody is willing to process their animal, but it's a really good way to learn. Like if you're ever, hopefully our economy doesn't crash to where we have to go out and hunt, but it's such a good tool and learning experience just to know what people go through to get meat put on the table for you.
Yeah, I mean, I talk about that a lot because we do raise, and so I've had to learn how to do all that. And it's like a really hard thing for somebody who like really cares about animals the way that I do to do it. But at the same time, there's this like such a rewarding feeling knowing that you know where it came from, you know how it was raised, you know that it died in a manner that it didn't suffer. Yeah. Like you don't know that stuff. We've lost such a connection with meat, especially when you buy it in the store. People, there's nothing attached to that animal to signify that it was an animal. When you're doing it yourself, you get that connection, and that it's just, I don't know, it's something you kind of have to experience, I guess, to really fully
appreciate it.
Yeah,
because I mean, obviously I'm an animal lover too, and this was the first year that I actually killed a deer. I didn't know if I'd be able to do it, but when I saw it, I was just like, meat on the table, and I didn't think about twice about it. And of course, I always have this first reaction of sadness just because a life was taken, but it was quick, it was smooth, the animal, lived a good life, and literally almost every piece of that animal is being utilized, not only by my family, but by my pets too. So like you're saying, it's so rewarding just knowing that the animal didn't suffer and all of it's being utilized pretty much.
I mean, we raised rabbits, and I've had a rabbit as a pet since I was like 5 years old. So that was a tough, like really tough one for me to do the rabbits. But at the same time, it's such a rewarding practice to see exactly how they're raised, how they're fed, know they lived a good life. My rabbits, they die instantly. They live great lives. It's hard. I'm not gonna lie, it'll never not be hard. Like I get emotional every time I do it. I think it'd be weird if you didn't, but I mean, I know that it's good for my pets. They're gonna eat meat anyway.
Yeah. So you know exactly what's being put into the animal too. So if people are able to raise, quail or chicken or rabbits, any kind of duck, turkey even, if they can raise their own, I would definitely look into that, not only to feed your own family, but for your pets too.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about people that may have difficulty, like maybe they're not in the country, like you and me, or close to, or they're stuck in the city in an apartment. Excuse me. I know some people have hesitations buying stuff from the grocery store, and I'm not quite sure where the disconnect is there, because, well, for one, like the food that you find in the grocery store has to be USDA inspected. It has to pass inspection for human consumption. So if it's fit for human consumption, it's going to be safe for your pet. Where do you think it's because there's like...
Well, I think in the US, we actually allow in meat a certain percentage of like salmonella and whatnot. So I think people freak out about that aspect, that they could potentially be transferring that to their pet. That's the only thing I can really think of is why people are so hesitant to feed the meat from the grocery store, because like you say, it's USDA inspected, it's fit for human consumption, it's perfectly safe to feed it to your dog or your cat.
Yeah, it's probably the bacteria issue, I guess, like you said. But ironically, they're more likely to get salmonella from vegetation.
Vegetables.
Which is crazy.
It's always the lettuce.
Or, yeah, it is. Or they're the kibble, you know, because it's sitting there in a bag and going rancid.
Well, a lot of people also have a false sense of security that kibble is sterile food, and it's not.
Yeah. So anything that you can find in a grocery store, it's perfectly safe to feed for your pets. The only thing that I would stay away from is any kind of tripe that you find in there, because that's been cleaned, it's been bleached. Well, they say it's been bleached, I don't know. And that has no, you know, value nutrition-wise to give to your pet. So if you have any, I don't think that there's any other food I've seen that you don't have to avoid.
No, I mean, the tripe's just not beneficial. It's not going to hurt them if they ate it, but it's just not going to provide the benefits that you want from tripe.
Right. Okay. I think, I mean, there's online pet food shops. Like, let's name some of the ones that you can get raw food items from. I know White Oak Pastures. They're a really big, awesome regenerative farm out in Georgia. You have Raw Feeding Miami in Florida. You have the Texas Tripe, which is based out of Texas. And then there's Hair Today. I'm not quite sure where they're located.
I think Ohio.
Okay. Then I know there's Top Quality Dog Food. I think, are they northeast?
Yeah, they're up here near me somewhere. Exactly where, I don't know, but they're up here somewhere.
And I know I'm missing a bunch. What are some?
My Pet Carnivore.
Yeah.
There's a lot that you can order online. Those are all the big ones, I think.
Yeah. Oh, there's the Viva Raw.
Viva, yeah.
They have some. I'm trying to think of pre-made grinds. Obviously, Darwin's. You can get completes.
Well, there's a ton of if you want to go down that route, there's a ton of pre-mades that you can have shipped direct. A ton.
And some of them, I mean, some do only ship like the pre-made, balanced and complete, but some of them do have just like blends, like a meat and organ blend that's not necessarily balanced. So you just have to visit different sites and see, you know, what they're offering. I mean, I've ordered from a few of those before, but the shipping always gets me.
I'm like, it like kills me. It's so much. All I can think is how much more food I could have bought with all that money.
I know. I get to the end. I'm ready to click, you know, purchase, but I'm like, oh, I can't pay that shipping.
I mean, it's super convenient if you have a huge budget and you like convenience. It's the way to go, because it'll just show up on your door, anything and everything that you could possibly need.
Yeah.
So it just kills me, like you say, the shipping, even the price of stuff is like, compared to what I pay for stuff locally, it's like, what the, like I don't even want to know how much I would spend to feed mine, buying everything that way.
Oh, there's another one. A lot of people look for like restaurant depots, like where their local restaurants are getting their meats and goods from.
Yeah, I do that. I buy bulk from a local restaurant supply. It's not Restaurant Depot, but it's a supplier that delivers to restaurants in our area that I can buy cases of pretty much anything that I need, and I buy from them.
Yeah, so that's good. Bulk buying, you know, if you can bulk buy, you might get wholesale prices, and that's going to make things a whole lot cheaper too. So I know anytime that I'm not able to source something that I want, or, you know, trying to get variety, then I might go online and just get certain things that I can't get at the time. I'll order those just because I'm I'm not ordering like tons and tons of food. So the shipping's not too
I
bad.
seriously probably get the best stuff from a local meat processor, and I know people always tell me they contact them and they say no, like they can't sell it or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been told no. I can't even tell you how many times. I just kept asking and looking for more, and eventually I found two that will sell. One will sell me any organ from beef or pork, because that's what he primarily does, for 50 cents a pound. And it's all local. Awesome. It's all local, grass-fed pork and beef. So any organ, anything from him. That's where I get all my tripe and everything from him. And then I found another one that's a little bit further, but he told me I could take, as long as I dropped off buckets to him, he'd throw whatever organ he wasn't using in it and just pick it up. He said he'd put it in his freezer and pick it up whenever you want it.
That's
so
awesome.
I mean, after being told no over and over, because they aren't technically in most states supposed to sell this stuff, but it's don't go to the large scale ones. This is like small scale people that are processing, you know, like the farmer down the road's couple cows or something, you know, not the big, like the small mom and pop processor. Yeah. They are often, they pay a ton of money to throw away all of that stuff. Yeah. Like the guy that I buy from, I've seen it. It's crazy. He throws away hundreds of pounds of tripe and liver and lung and heart and all these things that we're paying crazy money if we order it online for, or even if you buy it in the grocery store, it's, you know, $2-3 a pound for some of that stuff. Yeah. And he's throwing it, he's paying to throw it away. It drives me crazy that we throw away so much of that stuff. So I was thrilled to get in contact with somebody who was willing to say, hey, yeah, I'd rather it be used than be thrown away. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I had called around to a couple of the processors around my area, and they were all like, the state makes us throw dye on the waste. And so, I didn't look any further into that. I mean, you got to find the guy that's willing to like look the other way. Yeah. This one, I mean, it is like a mom and pop shop, but they're in a town and they do a lot of the deer processing in the area. So, I mean, they're busy constantly, but I may have to try to find somebody kind of more on the outskirts. So just, I guess, be persistent. Yes. Is the thing. And then I guess butchers, you can look in butcher shops. I think we've pretty much covered it. I don't think there's anywhere else we can get it. So let's talk about, I guess, grocery store conventional compared to grass-fed and organic stuff. So I know that it puts a lot of pressure on people when all you see is like, you know, you have to feed grass-fed and you have to feed pasture-raised. And I just want people to know that whatever fits in your budget is going to be good. It's going to be beneficial for your pet compared to a dry kibble. So it's all going to be a step up from feeding a processed food, even if, you know, Walmart meat is your budget. Yeah. It's still better than whatever you're going to find down the kibble aisle. Yeah. Because they're throwing God knows what into the kibble, like the meat byproducts, like you have no idea what that is. There's actually a dog food factory in the town next to us, and it stinks to high heaven when they're processing the stuff. And I'm like, whoa, I can't. If you've ever been past like one of the rendering plants that render that's down, it. Oh my God, that's the worst. The worst. It's disgusting. It will gross out anyone. I've seen like the smells in the summer when you drive past those places. Yeah, it's horrible. I couldn't think of the word. I was like, I couldn't think of rendering, but yeah, it's exactly it. It's a rendering plant, and I can't even be like in the area when they're rendering. So yeah, I just want people to know that like whatever raw you can get your hands on, it is going to be leaps and bounds over kibble. And I don't want to sit here and kibble bash either. I've had to feed
I've fed my pets kibble, and I've had, just based on my circumstances at the time, I've had to feed kibble. So I just want people to know that if that's all that you can budget for, then feed kibble. But if you're prepping food for yourself and you have some scraps, or you have like a piece of chicken left over, whatever, just toss it onto the bowl of kibble, because any fresh is going to be so beneficial to your pet. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Yep.
That, a fed pet is what we're going, for. But we just want to look for ways to improve, and raw is what they should be eating, but it's not always what people can feed. So just wanted to make that clear.
I mean, I have clients that do like a partial raw diet, like 2 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
They'll feed raw
Yeah.
instead, and then feed kibble the rest of the week, because it fits into their budget to be able to feed it twice a week, which that's fine too. You don't have to, it's not all or nothing. You don't have to dive all the way into
Right.
nothing.
Right.
Perfectly fine.
Let's discuss that too, because that's one of the myths floating around too, that you can't mix kibble with raw. And I guess it's because people think it's like a conveyor belt, like one food gets digested and then the next food gets digested. Like, that's not how it works. So
No.
the stomach is constantly fluctuating the pH to break down whatever contents are in the stomach.
Accommodates whatever you put in there. It adjusts
Mm-hmm.
to whatever meat and bone digest at different rates.
Yep. Compared to organs.
So it's kind of a weird thing to say you can't feed kibble and raw because they digest at different rates, or they need different pHs to break down. Literally everything you put in your stomach digests at different rates and requires different pHs to break down. So it doesn't really make any sense. It's fine. It's perfectly fine. There's absolutely nothing to that myth. Nothing.
Yeah. And I guess it would kind of just depend on how your individual pet tolerates the mix. Some dogs and cats are more finicky than others. Their digestive systems are all different, So just do whatever works best for your pet. All right. Do you want to kind of do like a Q&A for the last 30 minutes here or so?
Yeah, sure. I got quite a few questions.
Okay.
Want me to go through one of those?
Sure.
All right, I'll start with these. Is it okay to cut turkey necks in small pieces for my bulldogs due to choking? That was the first question.
Okay.
You wanna start?
Yeah. So I personally wouldn't cut anything into a smaller piece, especially like a turkey neck, because sometimes those things they're big honkers,
They can be huge.
Yeah. And sometimes I'm like, is Six going to handle that? But I mean, and he's, a large breed. So it's kind of like the ribs. You want to keep them in a bigger portion, because once you start cutting them down, and first of all, you're probably not going to be able to cut a turkey neck easily. You're going to put your pet more at risk for choking,
The smaller pieces, you're going to actually increase the risk of them choking on it.
Mm-hmm.
If it's one of those really like massively huge turkey necks, and you're feeding a smaller sized dog, you might be able to cut it in half and give it. But I wouldn't do small, not like bite-sized pieces. That's just incorrect, because they don't chew. They're not like a cow. They're not gonna sit there and chew. They're gonna crush whatever you give them enough to swallow it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you give a small piece, a dog is likely to not even try to crush it. They're just gonna try to swallow it.
Yep.
So I would say no to small pieces. No. If you can break it down, if you've got the right knife, you can cut a turkey neck lengthwise, and that does help some like the real big one. I've done that before with Dexter, even with because I got a box once. It was all tom necks, and they were like massive. I mean, they weighed like 5 pounds a piece. They were huge. Like there was no way he was going to chew on it. I didn't want him to eat it all, because he would sit there and eat it all. So we did cut those up a little bit, but I would say no small pieces. Still keep it big enough where they have to chew on it and work on it, not just swallow it whole.
Yeah. And then, I mean, if you have to, I guess you could always just kind of like take it outside and
you can
just
bash
bash
it, like
it.
get
Yeah.
a mallet or a hammer and smash it up
Mhm.
if you're really, really worried that they're gonna choke on something. Yeah.
And I've fed Six a huge turkey neck that was more bone than he needed for that day. So I just let him eat it, and I didn't feed him bone the next day.
Yeah,
So
and that's
if
perfectly fine to do. It's
yeah,
safer to do that than it
Mhm.
is to try to trim and cut exactly what they need for the day.
Right. So if that's what that person's trying to do, if
Yeah.
you're just trying to cut down the portion for the bone content, it's perfectly fine to feed more and then just kind of take the next day off and then pick back up where you left.
Yep. All right, next question. How and why should I feed chia seeds to my dog? Okay. I guess how and why. Okay, so why? They're great fiber. It's great source fiber for your dog. They contain plenty of minerals. Chia seeds are great. They can actually regulate insulin levels in the body, which is kind of cool. So they're good for use in pretty much any diet as a fiber source. They also improve how the body can use fats. So that's kind of cool little fact about chia seeds. They're high in quercetin, so they're good for dogs who have allergies. To feed them, you want to soak chia seeds. They'll turn to a gel, and that's how you want to feed them. I would never feed a dry chia seed because they absorb 10 times their weight in moisture. So if you throw a dry chia seed into your dog, it's going to just suck the moisture out of the body instead. So you want to soak them first, and they turn into like a gel, and that's when you want to feed them. And you can soak them in things like bone broth or goat milk even, and then they'll be even a little more beneficial if you don't want to use just water. I do that with bone broth with my dog because he's, we always have a ton of bone broth, and it's easy to soak seeds and stuff like that in the broth. So I would say that's the how and the why. If that's, do you have anything to add to that?
Nope, I don't. I typically don't feed that type of stuff. So you're kind of more knowledgeable on that than me.
Source. It's a really good fiber source for dogs and cats. Like if I get a dog, because a lot of dogs tend to get, I've had a fair amount of clients over the years whose dogs get very gassy from vegetation. And whether that's a gut imbalance or what, they don't want their dog like gagging them out of the house constantly all day long.
Right.
And if you switch fiber sources to something like a chia seed, that doesn't ferment the same way of vegetation well in the gut. So it gives them that fiber that they need without all the gas and everything. So
Gotcha.
it's a useful tool in that aspect. But
Okay.
do you need to feed a chia seed? No.
Okay.
If you want to feed a chia seed or there's a benefit for your pet to using chia seeds, then that would be how you feed them.
Okay. Just kind of going off of that question, someone else just asked, how well are chia seeds absorbed by cats? Since they technically don't have, they're an obligate carnivore.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like mineral content, minimal to none. I mean, we don't know exactly. I would say assume it's very, very minimal if they're getting anything from it. It's primarily fiber.
Okay. Makes sense.
It's more about the gut than it is about the minerals coming directly from the food, because chia seeds are great food for a lot of the different species in the gut.
Okay. All right. I'll pick a question I only got 3 people asking questions. One of them was, are supplements needed in the diet? And I'm going to say it just depends on which, I guess, or how you're feeding. Like, are you feeding a complete and balanced every day, or a balanced over time, or a ratio diet, barf diet? Like, they're all very different. I would say that, and it kind of depends on what nutrient you're trying to fill too. So I guess vitamin E would be a really good, like a necessary supplement. And are we talking about, I guess we need to talk about whole food supplements versus like isolates too, which we kind of touched on before. I would always go whole food supplements if you can get that, just because the body's going to recognize it. It's going to use it synergist. Oh my God, this happened to me the other day too. Synergistically. You're getting all the components together that make that supplement the most effective, as compared to an isolate.
The body doesn't try to store so much too. It's hard to overdose with food. That's where people get into trouble, I think, when they start using supplements, is they get supplement happy and then they start putting too many in there, and you start creating, ironically, what you're trying to prevent is a deficiency, but you can end up creating one when you start throwing too many one individual thing in there.
Yeah. So I would say yes, whole food supplements are needed to help balance out the diet.
Yeah.
What do you think? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I would say yeah. I mean, and it depends on what you're feeding. Like, it's so, it's such a broad question. It depends on what you're feeding,
Yeah. Okay. Hopefully, if whoever asked that question, if you need us to elaborate on a specific model that you're feeding, just leave a comment, or on the Instagram story, just add your question on top of that. All right, back to you.
All right. Can you explain what you mean by not every meal needs to be balanced? Wouldn't it make the other meals unbalanced due to compensating?
Okay, go ahead.
All right. Well, not every meal needs to contain every single nutrient, every single vitamin, every single mineral. An overall diet should be balanced, meaning that you're still providing all the vitamins and all the minerals that your dog or your cat needs, but that doesn't mean they need to come in every single meal or even every single day. So like we were talking about with the turkey neck, if it's big and you only need to feed a third of it for the day to meet your dog's requirements, you can let your dog eat the entire thing in one day and then go the next and know that your dog doesn't need more bone. It's not, you just don't want to continue to lack or excess anything over the next few meals. The body's going to constantly work to stay in that homeostatic state, and you can provide it with exactly precise amounts of nutrients every single day, but it's always going to utilize whatever it needs and discard the rest. It's just what it's going to do. So what I guess I'm saying by it doesn't need to be every single day is that you do need to provide your dog or your cat with all of the vitamins and the minerals that it needs to thrive, to be healthy. But you don't need to sit there and precisely measure each and everything out to the gram or be putting it through a spreadsheet on a daily basis to make sure that everything is in there every single day. Nothing on the planet eats that way. We don't eat. It's not a natural way to eat. And it's actually, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that it's not the healthiest way to eat either. So what I mean by balanced over time, and no, it's not going to make other meals unbalanced just because one isn't balanced. You compensate, say you take a week to cover your dog or your cat's nutritional needs. It doesn't need to happen in one day, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think you explained it pretty well. So just to kind of like elaborate, your pets do need, like, they have to have certain nutrient requirements, but they don't have to be met every day because the body utilizes it. It'll store what it needs, or it excretes what it doesn't need on a daily basis. So yes, they have to have nutrient requirements to thrive and be alive, but it's not a daily thing. You can do it just like us humans do it. We just balance throughout the day by eating a wide variety of foods. And so as long as you stay within the species appropriate foods that they should be eating, you're going to meet those nutrient requirements.
Just like those general guidelines that we talked about last time. If you follow, and you don't need to follow even those guidelines per se in each meal. You just need to follow those as your overall diet.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Perfect. Somebody had asked a question on here. Okay. How would you recommend introducing raw meaty bones in the diet? I'm having the hardest time getting my dog to understand its food. I've only ever given him dehydrated versions and he's stubborn. And I can attest to this because she showed me a video of, I think she was trying to give her dog like a foot, like a duck foot or something, and he was just playing with it instead of eating it. My dog's never been picky. Like, he'll eat whatever I put in front of him. So I think I told her, I was like, will he catch food in his mouth? Try to throw it up and have him catch it. Or I don't know, if he likes something stinky like organs or fish, maybe try to mix it in with that to where he's, going to try to eat the fish on top of it and crunching into the bone.
Maybe give it to him first while he's hungry. Like, don't feed him anything else. Give it to him first. Let him get a chance to play with it or whatever he needs to do with it. And he might sit down and start eating it after he's done playing around with it. Some dogs like to play with their food. They're like kids. I mean, my dog will do that sometimes. My dog does that with whole prey, small whole prey. He has to play with it first.
Yeah, and I think I had told her that when I was introducing whole prey to Abel, I was giving him a rabbit, and he just, like, he looked at it and he looked at me and he's like, what is this? Like, he started playing with it until I had to open it up and kind of like expose the innards, and then he just devoured it. But yeah, kind of making your dog hungry. They're not going to starve themselves.
No.
That's kind of one of the ways that you can get a picky pet to eat something, is make them hungry. They're not going to starve themselves. I promise you, they will eat the stuff that they don't want to eat.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a great tip. Let's see. Yeah. Oh, she said he caught the foot and then he ran away. All right. Another question I got was the link between grain-free kibble and DCM. Which we've, I don't know if you and I have ever discussed that, but the issue is, grain-free. Yeah, so they're replacing the grain with a lot of legumes, and they're not necessarily sprouting them or soaking them beforehand to get all the phytic acid out of it. So the phytic acid acts as an anti-nutrient, so it can actually deplete other nutrients in your dog's diet, which taurine could be one of them.
Yeah, they can block it. They can block the absorption of taurine, which is obviously a big problem.
Yeah. So and they had mentioned something about dogs not having the digestive enzyme to break down carbohydrates, which they don't have it in their saliva, but they do have it in their digestive systems.
The pancreas can make plenty. That's not the issue.
Yeah. So that's the issue with grain-free and DCM. It's just that they're using all these other legumes.
They don't need grain. A lot of people have gotten the idea that they need grains from all that, and it's that they don't need grains. There's no nutritional benefit to feeding your dog grains.
Right.
Zero.
I did. I think I gave Abel oats one time. I think I did it. He did pretty well on the oats, but it was mainly just to help keep some weight on him. And that was early on in my raw feeding process journey. Now I would have just increased the amount of food I was giving him. But yeah, so that's the issue with the grain-free. Let's see. And then the last one was what to expect for the general blood work checkup when going to the vet if they're on a raw diet. And I would say just expect a normal blood panel.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that can be a little bit high. Creatine in bun can be a little bit high for raw fed dogs. There is a chart I've shared it a few times. That's kind of the raw fed acceptable levels, because there's a bit of a higher range on those things. And it's just because they're taking in more actual protein and not protein from corn or protein from, byproducts in a meal form. So the body processes it a little bit differently, obviously. So those readings, there's an acceptable level that's a bit higher than what a kibble fed dog would have with a couple of those things. But other than that, no, it's going to be the same. Should be the same.
Yeah. All right. Somebody asked, is it necessary to add taurine supplement to a raw fed diet?
No.
And I'm going to say no. Yeah. If you feed heart, that's a really good source of taurine. So I always make sure I have a large breed dog that's susceptible to DCM. So I always make sure I get heart from a variety of animals into
any muscle that's a hard working muscle.
Yeah.
Is high in taurine. Gizzards, hearts, thigh muscles in poultry is high in taurine. I mean, meat in general all contains taurine, all of it. No, I definitely, you have some taurine loss in that myoglobin that leaks out of meat, but not enough to need the supplement. You have some taurine loss when you grind meat, but again, it's not enough to supplement. If you've had, the only time I might suggest it is with a cat. If you had all ground meat and it's been frozen for to the point that it's freezer burnt on the outside, it might benefit the cat to add taurine. I'd probably just add some raw milk to it because they're going to get taurine from that. But you might want to use a little bit of a taurine supplement if you're feeding really old, really freezer burnt ground meat to a cat. But that's about the only situation that I might say it might benefit. Otherwise, it's not necessary.
Okay. And then they also asked, is it necessary to add biotin daily to a raw diet? And I don't think so either.
Plenty of biotin in meat, eggs, fish. It's in all the things that we're feeding. So no, it's not reported. Maybe they're probably asking that because biotin's not reported in a lot of USDA data. So if you're using a spreadsheet, it will often show you you're really low in biotin, but it's just because it's not a nutrient that's reported.
That makes sense. All right. You have any more questions on your end?
Yeah, I had a few other questions.
Okay.
Can you feed too much of any one protein? You said to vary proteins, but can you feed too much of any one?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Anything in excess, even if it's healthy, is going to be unhealthy at some point.
Yeah.
So yeah, you definitely want to try to vary it up if you can.
Vary as much as you can. If you feed one protein, like if you do an elimination diet, that's the only time you would really want to stick to a single protein, and that's not a long-term thing. That's just a temporary to figure out if that protein's going to work for your pet or not. But feeding one protein over and over, this is why I didn't like doing the single recipe for a dog, because if they're going to eat the exact same thing every single day, right. I mean, that's a recipe for creating sensitivities. The more you expose, because sensitivities are formed based on exposure. If you continuously, like if you fed just all beef every day for 2 years and never fed anything else, maybe you could technically be supplying, if you had the right other foods and supplements in there, but you'd be running a risk of developing a sensitivity to beef because every single day it's only getting that protein in there. I don't think people even realize that that's one of the biggest ways you can develop a food sensitivity is by continuously exposing to the exact same thing every day. The body doesn't like that. It wants variety.
Yeah, it does. That's a good point too, because, and like on the flip side of that, when somebody is having an allergy to something, it's almost to get them to be not allergic or not sensitive to it is to have like that repetitive small dosing to it, you know? So
It's exposure therapy. We do the same thing with people. It's the same thing with dogs. Like when I get a dog or cat that's got really bad gut dysbiosis, initially you got to remove everything that causes that inflammatory response. But then it's more important that once you get the inflammatory response down, that you start introducing small bits of all those other proteins so that you can then build up that tolerance to eating them again. A lot of people go on those elimination diets with their dogs and they find a safe protein and then they just stick with that. And then they wonder why, 12 months later down the road, the dog can't eat that anymore because now they've developed this. And you kind of, it's a fine line. It's kind of one of those things that I don't think it gets talked about enough because people go into the elimination diet, things settle down and they stick with just those foods. But if you always avoid those foods for the rest of your life, you're not fixing anything. You're just avoiding it. You can fix it. You can fix anything that's not a true born with allergy. You can eliminate. We'll talk about that. We'll do a whole episode about it because there's so many dogs and so many cats with food sensitivities out there, and they can fix them. People need to know that you can fix it.
And I can give my own personal story on that because I had to do an elimination diet last year, and because the foods that I was eating all my life, all of a sudden now were causing me such severe stomach cramps and stomach issues that I took 2 different allergy tests, and that's a different topic in itself too, because that's just a snapshot in time, not necessarily a true picture of an allergy. But my 2 tests were like completely different. So I just cross-referenced and eliminated everything that was flagged. And then, did my elimination diet and started adding things back in that I no longer have problems with because I healed my gut. So we can definitely talk about leaky gut and allergies and all that. Cause like you said, I think people they think that their dog has an allergy when it really could just be like a leaky gut or imbalance type of thing.
Almost
that they could
always feel. Just a gut. Almost always. Allergies in dogs food allergies in dogs are super rare. Like 1% of dogs have true foodborne allergies.
Yeah. And I hear a lot that people say that their pet is allergic to this and allergic to that, and they can only have this. And I'm like, that just doesn't sit right with me.
Because it's not really,
definitely do that.
It's not real.
Yeah.
It's a sensitivity and you can fix that.
Yeah. Like a true allergy is when you're getting like anaphylactic or having like huge, rashes all over. So those are different things to look for.
Yeah. An antigen leaking into the blood response versus a true IGF allergy. It's apples and oranges. They're not the same thing.
All right. So hopefully we answered that one. Yeah. Feed variety. Anything over and over and over again, even if it's healthy, will end up unhealthy in the end.
No excess of anything.
Right.
All right. What is the best food source for my dog to get zinc? I don't like supplements. Well, red meats are going to be the highest in zinc. So you want to feed a diet that's got a lot of red meat in it. As far as foods go, an oyster is going to be the highest food protein source of zinc that your dog or cat can use. So you can feed, if your dog or cat can eat oysters, add a couple oysters in. There's zinc in a lot of the seeds and the nuts and the grasses and all that, but it's not as bioavailable. So I don't personally recommend that you rely on those things. There's some fermented grass products that are really, really high, like a wheatgrass or a barley grass. The fermented products, you can get some zinc from those. So if you're adding them into like your veggie mixes or whatnot, you can boost the amount of zinc because they're really like super duper high. So even when you factor in the fact that they're less bioavailable sources, you're still going to get some from them beneficial amount from them. But other than that, red meats, oysters,
Yeah.
it's in bone material. Like there's a lot of things that zinc, we know it's there. It's concentrated really heavily in eyes. So if you're feeding duck heads or whatever, there's a lot of zinc in the retinal cavity. We don't know how much because it's not something we've ever analyzed, but we know it's there based on, if you even look into like medical texts, when you're learning about like the biology of how an eye is put together, there's a lot of zinc there. So we know it's there. We know it's in a lot of ligaments and in the bone marrow itself. There's zinc in the marrow, in that red, especially in that red bone marrow. There's zinc in there. We don't know how much. So can I tell you that you're definitely going to get enough zinc from those? No, because I don't know how much is in. Nobody knows how much is in there. So red meats, and if you're worried about it, feed some oysters.
Yeah. I'm definitely with you on that because, you know, like we touched on in a previous episode, our dogs aren't going, you know, oyster diving, you know. So they had to be getting their zinc requirement from somewhere. And I think it is just in the raw meaty bones. It's in the bone, it's in the ligaments.
It is. I want to say that it is so bad, but like somebody's going to say, prove it to me, and I can't.
I know. Yeah. Well, and it can go, like there's lots of things that people, it's just going to be their hill to die on, but like you can't prove a lot of this stuff when it comes to nutrition, and there's no studies and stuff out there. But
I mean, even the guidelines that we're following, there's flaws with the way we've determined how much zinc a dog needs. So do we even know how much they need on a daily basis? And is it the same coming from raw meaty bones and meat and organ as it is coming from that processed kibble? No, obviously it's not.
Right.
So we're trying to compare things that aren't really comparable.
Exactly. So again, I think going back to feeding a variety, having the majority of the diet be raw meaty bones and lots of red meats, try to get wild game. I think it's, you know, it's going to be boosted in your grass fed and your wild game.
Yeah.
And then like you said, if you're worried about it, like I hadn't fed oysters in a couple weeks to 6, and I just threw a couple in the other day.
Yeah.
Just because he might.
Because they're crazy high in zinc. I feed them. They're crazy high in zinc. My dog likes them.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
I mean, no, it's not something they would go hunt and eat, but we do have the ability, you know,
to supplement.
They're not wild, so we do have the ability if we want to feed them something that could be beneficial, even if it's not something they would naturally eat.
Yeah. I don't think that they need it on a daily basis. Again, maybe,
and I can tell you that's the biggest issue that I found with people that are using zinc supplements, is that the dogs end up with stomach issues long term. They end up needing more. The longer they are on the supplement, the more of that supplement you need to give to get the same result. If you need a supplement, they're there, and you need to choose wisely which one you want to use long term if you're going to use it long term. But I just don't think that most dogs need nearly the amount of zinc that we think they need, or if they do, that it's in there, that we just don't know where it is. You know, it's in that bone marrow, it's in that connective tissue, it's in the eyes, it's in all these little things that we don't know, you know?
Yeah.
It's just frustrating because I can't be like, it's here and it's this much, so I guarantee you it's there. We can't do that.
Right. So again, that's when we bring it back to balance over time. Feed the variety,
balance over time. It's gonna get in there.
They're gonna get there. Yep, exactly.
I can't even tell you how many dogs this year I took off of zinc supplements because they were having problems, and the problems went away the second they stopped. So
yeah, and that's I love that point, because when we initially talked on the phone and talked about doing this podcast, you had mentioned the zinc thing, and I was always told, you know, that labs, they needed a higher amount of zinc for their specific breed. And so I always made sure that he had the oysters, but it was almost like the the more and regularly he had the oysters, like the more his skin was dry and flaking. And I'm like, what? This is having the opposite effect. And so
Yeah.
when I stopped giving him the regular oysters, it cleared up. I mean, granted, it was during the winter and stuff, so it could have just, the heat from the house and the dry air could have played into that. But, when I did stop, his dandruff kind of went away after a week or two. So I think that there's a correlation there. But
There is.
yeah. Yeah, you have the evidence there.
There is.
Okay. Someone asked.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, someone on here had asked, can you use rodent pinkies for zinc, vitamin E, and vitamin A supplementation?
Rodent pinkies specifically?
Yeah, the little tiny.
Yeah, no, I know what they are. I've read rodents for years.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, pinky mice, pinky rats, they are all pretty, I mean, there's nutritional data on all those whole prey, and they are pretty high in all of those nutrients that they just, you'd have to figure out how much you need for your individual dog or cat, whoever, whatever you're feeding. Could you use, I mean, if you feed whole prey in general, you're getting a lot of nutrients that you're not getting if you're leaving out all of those bits and pieces of the animal. So could you? I can't say for sure you're going to get exactly from them, but research the data. It's all of it. Rodent Pro has all the nutritional breakdown data for whole prey of all different sizes and even different sex, male and female, that contain different stuff.
I'm glad you said Rodent Pro, because that was another place that I sourced from for like the mice and the guinea pig and stuff. That's another good source that you can get your smaller whole prey items from. And like you said, they have all the nutrient data and what they are feeding them and how they're culling them on there. So sorry to interrupt there. So I guess you could put pinkies into the rotation. I would say I wouldn't just keep feeding pinkies for those specific things, but I think if you can incorporate them
if your dog
into the diet,
likes
it's going to help.
them, feed them.
Yeah.
Use them as a topper. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. A little treat. Okay, I think there was one more. Nope, that was it on here. You have more on your paper, right?
I do. My dog has allergies. Can I feed fermented food? Heard histamines are bad. Well, that's a complicated one. So if your dog has allergies, it means their body's already overproducing histamines. It's a histamine response. There's a lot of debate, and in nutrition, we still don't have a concrete answer as to whether or not histamines coming in from the diet are processed the same as the histamines that the body's making. So it's anecdotal evidence, I guess, but some dogs, when they do have a lot of allergies, do benefit from eating a lower histamine diet. So I would say in that case, avoid the fermented foods because they're going to be high in histamines. Avoid the canned food because it's going to be high in histamines. But on the flip side, we don't know if the body processes it the same, and we still don't know the answer. And there's a yeast protocol. So a dog who has yeast typically would say no to fermented foods for them too initially. But there's so many dogs that have benefited from it too. So to me, that says we don't know enough about it. I've had plenty of dogs with allergies that I've done diets for that can eat fermented food, and they've cleared up. There's no excess histamine response going on in the body. It's not being processed the same. So do I think that it is always processed the same in the body? No. But some dogs definitely do show some sort of improvement when you cut out all of those high histamine foods. So I don't have a good answer because in nutritional science, we're still trying to decide whether or not the body processes it the same. There's a good argument to say that it doesn't, I guess, with that evidence of dogs and cats that can consume things like kefir that have allergies, and then it helps them. Mm-hmm. Where other dogs will have a massive flare up and get super itchy if they consume it. I don't even know how to answer it because it's a yes and no. See what happens with your own dog. If cutting out histamines for your dog improves your dog's situation, then you should cut out the histamines. On the flip side, though, there's dogs that benefit from it. So I don't know.
I say just try it with it's all on an individual basis, and just see how your dog, do they seem to be getting better or not?
Yeah, I tell people if they do need to cut it out, don't be afraid to test the waters afterwards with introducing a little bit of something fermented and just see how they do. Don't dump a ton of fermented foods on them all at once. Right. Give them a little bit after it's settled down and see, because sometimes things resolve themselves if you cut it out for a while and then you're allowed to bring it back in. I'm super interested to find out if the body does process it the same, because we're kind of still trying to figure that out in human nutrition in general. So
okay,
that's
just try it, I guess.
I have another question about pancreatitis. Do we have a sample recipe or a guide for a dog with pancreatitis? I don't have no. Eventually in the recipe library, I'm going to put up specific things like that. But a guide, as far as it goes, you're looking at low fat diet initially. If you're in the middle of a flare, you got to cut fat because there's already too much fat in the bloodstream. You need to cut it down. But it's almost more important with pancreatitis long term to make sure that you cut carbs out of the diet than it is fat, because a dog with chronic pancreatitis can still eat a moderate fat diet as long as it's not getting high carbohydrates. And it's proven time and time again. So during a flare, there's too much fat already in the blood. You need to cut it down really, really low. Lean meats, no skin, no fat, no visible fat on meats. You want lean meats. And even during a flare, some dogs will benefit from a lightly cooked over a raw, just because you can eliminate even just a little bit more fat when you cook the food. But as far as guidelines for it go, moderate fat once you're stabilized, not in a flare, no carbs to very low carbs coming in. You need to optimize fat soluble vitamins, because when you have chronic pancreatitis, the body doesn't like to hold on to your fat soluble vitamins as well. So you need to really up the D, the E, and even vitamin C, because when dogs have chronic pancreatitis, they don't make C quite as efficiently as dogs that don't have that issue going on. So getting those in there. There's some herbs that can help. Dandelion root helps. You want to support the liver, because a lot of times the liver also incurs a little bit of damage with chronic pancreatitis. Eating small meals, small frequent meals, especially during a bout, if they're having a flare. You just need to do things to help the pancreas reduce inflammation and get back to functioning. Digestive enzymes are really beneficial during pancreatitis. Feeding pancreas, such a good thing to feed if you have pancreatitis. If you can get it in there, raw obviously is the best, but they have, freeze-dried pancreas supplements. Mm-hmm. Those are super good to help. You just need to help. You need to give the pancreas all the help it can get while it's in that flare, and pancreas will do that better than just about anything else.
Yeah, it's so true when people say if you have trouble with an organ like a liver, feed liver. If you have something wrong with the kidney, feed kidney. If you have a heart condition, feed heart. Like,
it's such old, ancient
it
wisdom
is.
that we've just lost, but it's so simple. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's a lot of the reason why a lot of dogs on kibble get pancreatitis, because it's just that the high fat, highly processed, high carb content that
It's really, I mean, people freak out. Yes, you have to really lower fat when you're having a flare of pancreatitis because there's already too much fat circulating in that serum in the blood. But long-term management, you will manage pancreatitis much better if you cut carbs than you will fat. I mean, I've got so many clients with pancreatitis that are eating typical, I mean, dogs and cats, you know, that moderate 10% fat as fed. They can handle it all day long when it's coming from fresh food.
yeah, I
And
was
you got to
gonna
cut
say,
carbs out.
did you see a lot of pets on a raw diet that had pancreatitis?
No.
Yeah.
No. You don't see
Okay.
a lot of raw fed dogs get it.
Yeah.
You see a lot of kibble fed dogs get it.
Yeah. I was just curious.
No.
I couldn't, unless somebody was just feeding like loads and loads
Maybe
of
like an
super
acute,
fatty.
acute bout, maybe if they get in the trash or something and eat a bunch of garbage, or, you know, I've had a client dog eat like a 3-pound stick block of butter
Oh,
off the
no.
counter. And that dog had a little acute flare, which in that case, you got to go to your vet, you got to get fluids, you got to, you know.
Yeah.
But the chronic, you know, when you're in that chronic pancreatitis state, it's more about eliminating that carbohydrate, because the pancreas also produces insulin. And, you know, it's all connected. They're not meant to be consuming all those carbs and putting all that out to digest all that. And it's taxing on their organs.
Yep. I agree. You answered that very well. Anything else?
I don't have any other questions written down.
Okay. Let me scroll through here. Let's see. I'm just going to scroll and make sure I didn't miss any questions. Does anybody else have any questions about anything while we're on here? Let's see. I think we've answered everything on here. Yep. Okay. Well, I guess if nobody has any more questions, we can just circle back next week on a different topic. I guess if anybody has any questions or comments, as always, drop them on our YouTube at the Raw Truth. We'll answer your questions over there. If you guys could like and subscribe it, we'd be forever grateful. It helps get all this information out to more people. And Erin, I guess we will be back next Monday. Is there a specific topic you want to talk about next week? Do you want to do like the allergy or leaky gut, or?
Yeah, we can dive into that.
Okay.
Either one. Why don't we ask? See what people want.
Yeah. What do you guys? Oh, I wanted to put this out there too. So, you know, the reason why we did this is obviously we want to encourage people to feed balance over time. And I know that there's a lot of people that have fed that way for decades. And we want to hear from those people.
Yes.
So if you're one of those people that have fed balance over time, maybe you breed dogs or whatever, and that's how you always do it, we would love to have somebody as a guest speaker just to tell their story and how they got into it and what they've seen in their pets. Or leave a comment on the YouTube channel. but yeah, we would love to hear from people that feed this way and have done it for a long time.
Yeah.
Let's see, someone did put a question down. Someone asked about whether or not it's possible for dogs to consume too much protein. The suggestion was to add more carbs. They'll reach out to you later. Okay. Probably you, since you're the
Too much
since you're the
protein?
nutrition expert. Yeah.
I mean, if you have a healthy dog, I wouldn't be worrying about feeding too much protein. As long as, I mean, you don't want the dog to be using the protein as their energy source, because the byproduct of that will be nitrogen, which isn't good. So you want to ensure you have sufficient fat for energy metabolism if you're not feeding carbs. But as far as is there too much protein, I think a lot of people get that freaked out from the whole, like, because of it's kibble. If there's too much of a certain protein in there, then you can have an issue with that. But it's not the same when you're getting it from fresh food, from meat. No, I would say no, unless we're talking about some sort of specific health issue, and then in that case it's very individualized.
Right. So if a pet did already have like a renal condition,
Yeah.
for most healthy pets, I don't think, and the body's going to eliminate, the excess protein or whatever it doesn't need through the kidney. So if it's healthy, it's doing its job. Let's see. Last question. What can I do to prevent bladder stones from producing in my new puppy? So you and I, we talk about cranberry with D. manus a lot. It's just a really good supportive supplement, I guess you can give. And again,
it depends on what kind of stones they're talking about too.
Yeah.
Struvite stones, calcium oxalate stones. There's multiple types of stones.
But if you're feeding a well-rounded out diet, unless your puppy has a known condition, I don't see any extra.
I mean, there's some breeds. There's some breeds that are a little more prone to bladder stones and bladder, issues in bladder infections, urinary infections. With those dogs, you could certainly incorporate things like the cranberry, because it's just food. You can incorporate that into the diet. You can incorporate things like dandelion root into the diet. That'll help. You can incorporate things like even slippery elm being incorporated a few times a week into the diet can really help prevent stuff like that from happening in the first place, if that's like the concern, that it's a dog that's more prone to that type of thing. I mean, other than that, I wouldn't say there's really anything you can do to prevent feed a clean diet, feed a variety of fresh foods, keep, don't overload them with carbs, don't overload them with, too much of any one thing.
Yep.
I don't know. There's no real prevention, but if you have an issue, then it's already an existing issue. Yeah, it's different.
Yeah. And don't let your vet tell you to get on a urinary kibble.
No.
My vet tried to do that, and I was like, no, I'm not feeding him cornmeal.
For them.
Yeah. It was like, this is going to do more damage than anything.
It does.
But yeah.
It's frustrating.
She says she feeds a variety. I don't think that you're going to have any issue. If you just want to add some extra support, like Erin said, the dandelion, I really love dandelion. That's why I put it in my supplements. And also the cranberry. I do the cranberry D. manus. It's not a daily thing.
And both of those are things. Both of those are they're just food. So I mean, you could even use them, on a regular diet.
Yeah. All right. I think that's it. Let me just scroll up one more time just to make sure. Okay. Well, I guess should probably end this. All right. So next week we will come back around and talk about allergies and leaky gut and all that.
Sensitivities and all that good stuff.
Yep. I think a lot of people have issues with that. And
they do. It's probably, aside from how do I feed a balanced diet or how do I find something, it's got to be the up in the top 3 of things I get asked about.
I think so too. All right. Well, Erin, nice chat. I will see you next week.
All righty.
All right. Everyone have a great week. We'll see you.